Hi everyone, this is Hannah from Hanime on Anime, or well rather this is Hanime on Anime herself. And before I started with today's video, I did want to put out a bit of a warning. For today's review, or the video that I did, we'll be covering The Rising of the Shield Hero. Sorry to spoil that, but we'll be talking about the controversial scene that involved the false rape accusation. And I wanted to put out a warning for those who feel like it's a very uncomfortable subject matter in regards to talking about sexual assault and rape and things like that, because I will be talking about that very briefly, but it's only until the very end. And honestly though, again, it's at the very end, and I just wanted to put that warning out there for those of you who felt like it's a very touchy subject to bring up, whether or not it's something you're not comfortable talking about or you have been affected by that. But regardless, that was all that I wanted to mention before this video started. But other than that, enjoy. Greetings, fabulous people of the internet. Hanime on Anime here, and welcome to another brand new, fresh review. Today's show I had some interest in, as it was one of the winter 2019 shows that everybody was talking about, but decided to wait and not see it right away. Well, I had the opportunity to actually sit down and watch it, and it has some great things going for it, but it also has some missed opportunities as well. With that being said, let's get started with today's review on The Rising of the Shield Hero. We open the series with your young, average otaku, Naofumi Iwatani, finding a mysterious book that sends him to the mysterious new world of Malremark. Along with 4 other young men, Naofumi becomes one of the new heroes destined to save the world from the strange dimensional storms simply called the Waves. Now in this isekai setup, you'd think that Naofumi would gain all the respect and praise due to him as a hero and rise to the occasion and defeat the Waves and become the greatest hero of all time. Well, wrong! From day one, he's constantly put down and mistreated by the villagers, the king, and even by the other 3 heroes. And after being accused of rape by a fellow female guild member, Naofumi is brought to a new low and becomes an outcast. Things start to look up, however, after encountering a demi-human named Raftalia, as he makes her his fighting partner. Still, in a world where everyone is literally against you, trying to overcome all the hardships and misplaced discouragement will be easier said than done. Just from this synopsis alone, the show sounds kind of awesome and actually brings something fresh and long overdue to the isekai genre. Well, stick around and you'll find out if it really does that. Summarize my overall thoughts on The Rising of the Shield Hero, 2 phrases come to mind. And fair warning, they're from Channel Awesome. I know, but they work. Yes with an if, and no with a but. Overall, I give The Rising of the Shield Hero a 77. To give this show some due credit here, there are some good things going on in this show that have kept me watching it for most of its entire run now. One of those being, in particular, if there's anything that the isekai genre needs right now, it's a break from its traditional tropes and stereotypes that are overused and overdone, and gosh, believe it or not, this show actually delivers on that. To an extent. One common stereotype you see in isekai shows is that when the main character is summoned to a new world, they become the all-powerful and undisputed hero of the day. But here, the exact opposite happens. Naofumi is not seen as the hero. Right off the bat, he's called weak because he possesses the shield, which, in male remark, is often considered the weakest weapon. Then he's labeled ignorant and later a delinquent for almost no reason and with no proof. This was wonderful. In any other show, Naofumi would be treated with all the respect and dignity in the world. Heck, he probably would be given 200% of that. But here, he's treated with complete disdain. And the show holds nothing back in how far it goes in continuing to show little care or respect for this guy, which makes it ironically interesting to watch Naofumi get dragged lower and lower for almost no reason. But it sucks you in like a magnet and keeps you almost too invested. I remember in one of the earliest episodes, there was a moment when Raftalia is almost taken away from Naofumi in the most unfair of circumstances. And I was livid. I kid you not. I was literally screaming at my screen in complete shock and anger at what scum the people in this world are and how they would pull him down any further than where he was. But this makes Naofumi an interesting character, as we have to watch him start from the ground up and prove to everyone that he's not who everyone believes him to be. And as the series progresses, you see him overcome and outperform the other heroes. He may not be any more popular amongst the masses, but he has full support from the audience. Again, this was done wonderfully and proves that you don't need to be overly complicated in doing something different in a genre that's plagued with not being different. I'm talking to you, Ray Zero. The show also brings up a very interesting point that questions the undisputed hero trope even further. Oftentimes, the show makes a very clear message that the heroes oftentimes make things worse. Sometimes, they are the problem. Itsuki, the bow hero, Ren, the sword hero, and Motoyatsu, the the spear hero, are often praised and hailed as true heroes when really they have zero teamwork when fighting off the waves and often do more harm than good when trying to solve major crises. Again, oftentimes they are the problem. Motoyatsu tries to avert a famine in one village by unsealing an ancient seed, which ends up overrunning the place with plant monsters. Ren slays a dragon whose rotting corpse causes a plague in a nearby village, and Itsuki overthrows a corrupt leader in one village and leaves said village to its own devices, plunging it into crippling debt and famine. To quote Naofumi himself, well, these bunch of kids are supposed to be the heroes, they don't do a very good job at it. The message is pretty apparent, but it's clear that these heroes in actuality do more harm than good majority of the time. And yet, no one reprimands them, except for Naofumi, and their actions get overlooked by blind eyes. Again, this brings up an interesting point that many isekai shows don't seem to bring up. You could call it clever deconstruction, but another reason why this works and is so noticeable is that you feel so much sympathy for Naofumi that we almost hate these other heroes, even though we know that they are in fact trying to do some good. Though this does bring the show back around to its isekai roots and seeing Naofumi often cleaning up the damage done in all three of these cases I mentioned earlier. And to give Naofumi some credit here, he does do a few good deeds himself that certainly don't go unnoticed. An entire village becomes indebted to him after he protects it from one of the first waves that he participates in. Overall, it's not the strongest bit of deconstruction I've seen, but it's certainly welcome in a genre, once again, that's in need of some fresh air. And this was, in fact, the biggest lure of the series for me. Something else that was done considerably well in the show was its side characters.
Or rather, those that are directly connected to Naofumi.
I felt like for a show like this, it did a particularly good job making some pretty awesome side characters. It was especially nice to see the chemistry between Raphtalia and Naofumi develop. We get to see how their relationship started and how it grew from there. It was also nice considering that at the time of making this video, the relationship is not romantic, as you almost assume it would be, like in every other isekai show out there. In fact, you get the feeling that they're more father and daughter, but again, that's because the series takes the time to show why they have this kind of relationship. Even Naofumi's other guild member, Philo, who's this bird lolly girl thing, whatever, she's precious, is also given a little development into the crucial role she plays, not only with the group, but also with the overall plot. There are also times that even the other three heroes get some depth when they start to realize that maybe they're not being the heroes that they should be. Again, this was kind of nice and almost needed. And while a little more development may not seem like much, I think it's a step in the right direction.
So, yeah, for the most part, I actually enjoyed this show. Far more than I had expected to. It has a great premise to it that doesn't try so hard to get your attention, and it actually does try to develop its characters. But sometimes it'd be kind of nice to see that development, don't you think?
For all that I've said thus far, the biggest problem that I have with this show is that at times it's painfully rushed. In fact, at the midway point in the series, you feel like the fast forward button got mashed without anybody knowing it. And it ends up ruining a lot of the moments in the show that kind of need to be slow. Remember what I said earlier about Raphtalia and Naofumi's relationship? As nice as it was to watch that develop, it's only one episode. No joke. In one episode, Raphtalia is a kid learning to be a good fighter, and then in the next episode, poof, she's an adult and a talented sword fighter. Well, what the heck happened in between those two episodes? I'd be interested in seeing what happens there. Maybe we learn more about Raphtalia's training as a fighter and how she became so kick-butt. But nope.
Just skip it. Nobody cares about that, right?
The same thing also happens with Philo, though she's treated with less care, as much of the connection we're supposed to feel for her is given to us in a montage of pictures after she hatches. What's wrong with dedicating an episode to that? I wouldn't mind seeing that. Besides, did I mention before that Philo is precious? A lot of the series feels like this. It rushes some of the relationships we see on screen to the point where you feel like something's missing.
What's worse, this even seeps into the plot itself.
After the first episode where we see how and why Naofumi becomes the kind of character he is throughout the series onward rushes a lot of what should be slow moments of him gradually overcoming the struggles he faces. It would have been nice to actually savor the angst and emotion for at least half of the series, if not the entire series, though it would be a lot darker. Instead, what should ideally take up the first season happens in a span of 4 episodes. Yeah, that's right. 4 freaking episodes. It's like the series turns into this overprotective mother that holds your hand and pats your head, reassuring you that everything will be all right. Because of this, some of the show's moments that should bring relief and joy end up feeling like they weren't earned. Maybe we needed to experience the same despair that Naofumi feels 99% of the time throughout this show. It would have made this show a lot better because in those moments where Naofumi does in fact achieve something, it would feel as big and as triumphant as the show makes it out to be. As it stands though, it comes off as painfully rushed.
And speaking of painful, though this wasn't a problem that I personally had with the show, let's bring this up.
The Rising of the Shield Hero brought up some considerable controversy and outrage when it first debuted because of one particular scene. That scene being where Naofumi is falsely accused of raping a woman who later turns out to be the princess of Melromark, one of the princesses. At the time, many viewers argued that this plot point was very poor in taste in light of the Me Too and Time's Up movements. Others have defended this as a legitimate crime.
Sorry for me siding with the latter here, but this is something that does happen.
It happens very rarely, especially to the degree in which the show presents it, but you'd be very ignorant to say that this doesn't happen.
But if it's any consolation, I get why people were upset over this.
Within the past year, sexual harassment and assault have been taken more seriously, and rightfully so. They're very serious and even heinous crimes. And the series itself doesn't hide the fact that this plot point was added for attention and shock value. But being completely honest here, I'd have been more concerned if the show focused on the court proceedings of this case, which it doesn't. Plus, there have been other anime shows within the past few years that have had far worse displays of sexual assault. And if you've been watching this video up to this point, you know that this certainly did not deter me from watching the show.
Oh, and rest assured, you don't hate mine because she falsely accuses Naofumi of rape. You hate her because she's a spoiled, spiteful, self-entitled piece of trash.
Like I said, it's clear this was added to get an audience's attention, but you can take comfort in knowing that it doesn't dwell on this moment for very long. Still, while that might have not been the best way to get people to watch the show, it could have done much worse.
So bringing back what I said earlier, when looking at the show, two phrases come to mind. Yes with an if, and no with a but. On the one hand, yes, The Rising of the Shield Hero is a good show if you don't mind feeling like it's rushed. And on the other hand, no, but it does a good job introducing a new twist in the isekai genre, and it actually tries to develop its characters a considerable amount. So, it's a mixed bag, but worth the watch. And so that wraps up today's review. As always, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to stay tuned as I review a show that, admittedly, I've been wanting to review for quite some time now. Till next time.
Oh my